So, I'm Julie Wiskirchen from the Authors at Google team here at Google Los Angeles, and today I'm very excited to welcome Greg Koch, who is the co-founder and CEO of Stone Brewing Company. Let's welcome Greg. Just a little bit of background on Greg. He and his partner, Steve Wagner, founded Stone in 1996, and it has become one of the fastest growing and highest rated breweries in the world, brewing 148,686 barrels in 2011. Stone is the 14th largest craft brewery in the United States and the largest American-owned brewery in the southwestern United States, a position it achieved without advertising, discounting, or giving away freebies. Greg passionately believes that environmental and social sustainability go hand in hand with brewing mind-blowing beer. And today he's here to talk about his book, The Craft of Stone Brewing Company, Liquid Lore, Epic Recipes, and Unabashed Arrogance. So please join me in welcoming Greg.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here right at the heart of Google, Venice Beach. I gave a little delay there, so you can edit that however you see fit. So, I started Stone a few years ago with my partner Steve Wagner, and let's get right into it. I have a premise for you, and this premise is going to lay out how the United States became the greatest brewing nation in the world. Fact, it is today the greatest brewing nation in the world. You can acknowledge that if you like. You can acknowledge that if you like. No bullshit. I've always wanted to say that in a Google Doc. Actually, San Diego alone at the most recent World Beer Cup won more medals than Belgium, Germany, and the UK combined. And in addition to that, the majority of judges at the World Beer Cup were from Europe. The Financial Times in the UK said there's a second American craft revolution going on. It's a craft beer revolution, and it's breaking out all over the country. But before this bright sunshine that we have now, there were the dark days. But let's go back a little bit. In fact, let's go back a lot. Hop in with me, we'll fire up the flux capacitor, go back in time to when their transportation method was the horse-drawn cart. And each brewery in the United States only had a distribution area that was the distance that a horse-drawn cart could go out from the brewery and back within one day. But over time, with consolidation and changes in the Industrial Revolution with transportation and refrigeration, the beer landscape in the United States changed dramatically. We went from 3,200 plus breweries in the United States to, well, let's find out. The era of commodity beer got really in full swing in the very end of the late 1800s and the early 1900s, where, well, I can't imagine going into a saloon like this and asking for anything other than beer. If you'd said, which beers do you have? You would have probably gotten a pretty funny look, let alone calling it out stylistically or brand name wise. That just wasn't the way it was done. That wasn't what was offered. It's not like this beautiful cornucopia that we have here today. And then along comes Carrie Nation. I like to call her the mother of organized crime. Carrie Nation, of course, was the leader of the women's temperance movement, which led forth Prohibition and the rise of the true godfather of crime, and some very, very stylishly dressed people at that time. Plus Eugene Roddenberry. I love that episode. And certainly led to a lot of crying in the streets. Even though there was virtually not much choice in the landscape of beer, there was still the choice of having beer, except for this period of time. And there, of course, was a lot of people weren't happy. I wouldn't be happy. And then almost 13 years later, Prohibition was repealed in 1933. Well, it's interesting to take a look at the U.S. brewery count. You can see, again, in the late 1800s, nearly or in excess of 3,200 breweries. And take a look at that line. It dips down all the way, of course, during the Prohibition years to 0. But you can draw your own line across to what it would have been likely if Prohibition had never existed. Consolidation, mass commodification, homogenization was happening in pretty much every category in food and beverage and a lot of other things in the United States during this era as the Industrial Revolution kept chugging and chugging and chugging along. Leading us to, years later, when in 1979, we had the low point of just 42 breweries in the country, all of them being essentially the same. Well, all but thankfully one, Anchor Steam. The Anchor Brewery up in San Francisco was really the only brewery that was brewing anything that was functionally different from pretty much everything else across the nation for its flagship beer. The other 41 breweries, their flagship beers were essentially competing with each other in the same space. Well, Jimmy Carter, in his infinite wisdom, actually removed the excise tax for home brewing. So he did, while home brewing was legal in many states up to that point, he actually had to fill out a lot of forms and pay excise tax. And Jimmy Carter wisely got rid of that, freeing it up to really start this landscape of home brewing and this culture of home brewing, led by Charlie Papazian. Right? And who recognizes this man right here? A couple of hands. This guy is considered to be the father of modern home brewing. Speaking of which, let's cheers to Charlie and all of you guys here. Cheers. Or this is Oaked Arrogant Bastard Ale. So I will teach you the Arrogant Bastard Ale cheer. It goes very simply. Here's to me. And so dawned a new era as homebrewers helped stretch the bounds of what was considered to be beer. In 1978, Charlie Papazian started the Association of Brewers. And then in 1981, Charlie started the Great American Beer Festival. And then in 1982, he wrote The Joy of Home Brewing. And what was I doing in this era? Yeah, in 1984, I graduated from high school. But in 2010, Charlie was honored with the Belgian knighthood, the brewers of the Belgian Brewers Federation. And I was honored to stand next to Charlie to also receive that same honor. So in the late 80s and the early 90s, it was boom times for craft brewing. Things really started to take off. And in fact, the U.S. brewery count went up dramatically. You can see that in the 80s and the early 90s, it started really going north. And beer was flourishing across the nation, and people were learning about the different styles of beer that were available, not just the fizzy yellow stuff. But then the first bust, the bubble burst. In 1996, all of a sudden, the growth curve went from sharp to essentially flat within just a 1.5 year time period. You can see the volume growth went to almost nothing. Now, if you were going to open up a brewery, when would you pick in this curve to open up? Well, yeah, somewhere in there, that's when we started. And let's see. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I should pick the bottom. Or maybe just ever so slightly before it hits bottom. Yeah, that seems like a good time. Well, we didn't know, but that's when Steve and I decided to open up the Stone Brewing Company. We didn't realize that this was happening when we opened up. We only knew that wholesalers, retailers, well, pretty much everybody or nobody wanted our beer. We couldn't sell our beer to anybody, hardly. All the wholesalers would tell us, you know what, it's imports is where it's at. And all the retailers would say, hey, we're DCing, we're discontinuing all these brands. Well, that is when we opened, and this is what it looked like. I'd like to actually bring up my co-author in the Stone book, Randy Clemens, and we're going to bring him into the conversation and continue. So,
going to get intimate.
Whoa, that wasn't part of the arrangement, Randy.
Thank you.
Beer. Sure.
Where's mine? Hi. How you guys doing?
Good.
All right.
Randy Clemens, everybody. Co-author, Stone Brewing
Thank
Company.
you.
Which side do you want? How about this?
All right. We're doing this a different way than we've done it before. I'm not typically involved in these kinds of things, but it kind of followed suit just in that we more or less did this in writing the book. I knew a bit about beer and a little bit about Stone, but I kind of got to know more just working with Greg. So we're going to try it this way. Enough of that slide, though.
Cheers.
Thank you. So if you could just talk a little bit about the prehistory, how you and Steve met.
Yeah, so I actually, I give a lot to Anchorsteam as credit, because Anchorsteam was the first beer that opened my eyes. I was living in Los Angeles, and I went to this dive bar in downtown LA in the warehouse district, sort of the artist loft district. It was called Al's Bar. And they had, did I hear a knowing?
Alameda?
What's that?
Alameda.
Sort of off Alameda, yeah, Traction. And it was an incredible hole in the wall it had. Is just a portal, no sign, and it was off this very, very, very small street in a very gritty part of town. But they had about 6 beers on tap, and I would get Anchor. I saw Anchorsteam. I decided to try it, and it was then that I realized that it was the only beer, as it warmed up, that just didn't taste like hell. Because the rest of the beers they had on tap were fizzy yellow beer. And I had this reaction like, wow, beer can taste like this. I had no idea, because previous to that, I had only been aware of the existence of the fizzy yellow commodity side of the equation. So that was the first spark in my journey towards craft beer. Over the years, I started visiting small breweries, going to beer festivals and specialty beer events and so on. During a similar time period, Steve Wagner, my business partner at Stone, had been taught to homebrew by one of his bandmates. He was in a band here in LA. And he and I then ran into each other at a little class at UC Davis called A Sensory Evaluation of Beer geek class. And I saw Steve during this class, and we came up to each other in the break, realizing that we'd actually met a few years earlier through a common friend in the music industry. That sparked our conversation on the beer side of the equation.
All right, so you meet at this class at Davis. Was a conversation had then and there about potentially starting a brewery? Was a spark lit, and kind of where did it go from there? I mean, how did Davis get you both to San Diego?
Yeah, the conversation actually did begin there, although not quite literal of, hey, do you want to maybe start a brewery together? But instead, we had that in the back of our mind as we started the conversation of, hey, maybe we should get together and do a homebrew. Steve was actually living in a little bungalow in Santa Monica, just a hop, skip, and a jump from here. And I started going over to his house and playing assistant homebrew lackey, because he was quite experienced homebrewing at that point.
So you were sanitizing everything?
I was sanitizing. I was a bottle washer, cleaner,
okay.
Sanitizer, do it again, because he would then watch me do it all and instruct me I didn't do it right so I could do it again. I think he was teaching me how to wax on and wax off.
Gotcha. So
did I answer the question? I forgot what the question was already.
You started. No,
Okay.
So homebrewing. See, this is why I'm here. So Steve does some professional brewing in between, and how does San Diego come into the equation?
Okay, so Steve and I started planning opening a brewery. During this time, I was busy with another business, and Steve actually was called up to Portland to house sit for his brother, who was going on a long sabbatical, and said, "Hey, come house sit for me." And he and his wife Laura went up to do that. While he was up there, he got a job at a brewery called Pyramid. Back before the Pyramid that you know today, it was really a much earlier version of it. And it was in Kalama, Washington, just north of Portland, Oregon, where it was still called Hart Brewing at that time. And Steve got a job as a shift brewer. In spring of 1995, I actually had gone down to San Diego to see an old friend of mine from college, and I called up Steve and I said, "Hey, how about San Diego?" And he said, "Well, both my brothers went to school down in San Diego. I really like it down there. Yeah, I'd consider that." So I moved down just a few weeks later and started looking for a place to call the home of what would be our brewery.
All right. So you guys obviously agreed on it. It's July 26, 1996.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times in our 16-year history.
Okay.
Not too many.
So you find this spot. It's in San Marcos, North County, San Diego. It's an industrial park, kind of in the middle of nowhere, kind of around nothing. What was the initial reaction? I mean, what did people think of the brewery, and what did people think of the beer?
So, craft brewing had been, as you saw from that chart, had been growing from around the 25 to nearly 55% annual growth rate. Until the year we opened, it was around 7%, if I remember correctly. But and then our first year of business, 1997, went down to 2%. So it was almost completely flattened out. What did people think of our beer? They thought our beer was bitter and somewhat nearly undrinkable. And the very first beer that we produced, Stone Pale Ale, quite modest by today's standards. We brewed exactly the same today as we did then. Here was a low 40s. In the IBU range, pale ale. And it was aggressive for a lot of people.
All right. Getting it around town in this fancy Ford Aerostar there.
That's right.
Very nice.
We were self-distributed because, as I mentioned earlier, none of the wholesalers were interested in distributing our beer. So we started up our own distribution company, which we jokingly called Aerostar Distributing for the panel van. And that's when it was brand new. We hadn't delivered a single keg of beer yet that day, or yet at that time. And unfortunately, we don't have a picture, I don't think, of what it looked like when we finally sold it off. Yeah, I can just tell you that we would go around the corner. I would see it pull out of the brewery, a few years into it, and it would go around the corner laden with kegs, and the van would turn like this. It'd just be like this squishy, bouncy kind of thing. And I'd go, yikes, I hope we're going to be okay.
All right, and these are just some of the early tap handles, which you self-harvested, is that correct?
Yes, I used to go to the beach in Cardiff and find exact shape, size, kind of configuration of stones to then drill to add that ferrule on the bottom and have them etched with the name of the particular beer. So these are super old school and probably somewhat collectible these days.
All right, so you have these beers. You had Stone Pale Ale, which people were telling you was way too bitter. So
not everyone, thankfully. So
yes.
I don't want to give the impression that nobody liked our beer, but
obviously.
I can tell you that I'm going to sound like the old guy here now, but we had to walk uphill both ways barefoot in the snow with a heavy load on our shoulders. It's not like today where we have I can tell you a room full of people would not shown up to hear me talk. Even with free beer. I'm serious. It was an odd time in our nation's history.
So, did you scale back?
Well, hell no.
Okay.
Is that my cue?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my cue.
Yes.
I'm going to read a little, excuse me. May I read just a little bit from the Stone book? The Craft of the Stone Brewing Company. Liquid Lore, Epic Recipes, and Unabashed Arrogance by Greg Koch, Steve Wagner, and Randy Clemens. Sticking to our guns. So I remember telling you how I was talking about beer buyers, or bar buyers were telling us our Stone Pale Ale was too bitter. Sure, we could have listened and scaled back on the hops, but we didn't want to. It wasn't our nature. We were brewing beers that we like to drink. And if they didn't like it, well, we'd find other people who did. Maybe. Hopefully. Instead of easing up, we went bolder. In August of 1997, we released Stone IPA to celebrate our first anniversary. IPAs are almost de rigueur now for most breweries, but at the time, drinking an IPA was a new experience for a lot of people's palates. Bitter, yes, but the fresh flavors and aromas that came from the hops, who knew beer could taste like this? Hopheads were being born, and Stone was certainly one of the delivery rooms. To quench this new thirst, we brewed ever-escalating IPAs for the subsequent 4 anniversary celebrations, going bigger and bolder each time, culminating with the now somewhat legendary Stone 5th Anniversary IPA. This hunger for hops was a good thing because we were gearing up to release yet another brew. It was, and still is, an aggressive beer. You probably won't like it. It's quite doubtful that you have the taste or sophistication to be able to appreciate an ale of this quality and depth. And that was, of course, the Arrogant Bastard Ale.
So I was going to ask who here has had Arrogant Bastard Ale, but most of us are drinking the oak version of it, and if you're not, there's still some over there. But there was so Greg just gave you kind of a tease on the back text label, the back label text, excuse me. But there's this whole angle of "you're not worthy," and I think a lot of people have kind of taken that as a challenge or thought of it as brilliant marketing. And what's with that?
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't. So when I wrote those words and continued. On with, I suppose, the insults or the elbow to the ribs of the possible drinker, it was really written to warn people away because Arrogant Bastard Ale, we waited a year and 4 months to come out with it, even though we had created the recipe, and by we, I mean Steve 99% and me 1%, but I'm going to take my ownership here. We had created that recipe before we actually had opened the brewery. So we squirreled it away knowing that we were going to release it at some point, but waiting until what we thought was a better time. So when we were producing it, I thought maybe we would sell 100 cases. I really didn't know, but I was quite certain that there were not very many people out there that could handle the beer. So I wrote the beer for the label for the beer from that angle, trying to warn people away. So one, they didn't just buy it and dump it down the drain, which would have been painful because I knew I loved the beer. And two, because I never wanted to just goad or talk somebody into trying our beer when they probably wouldn't like it. So I literally tried to warn them away. Now, granted, I did have some fun with the warning and throw that elbow in the ribs or hockey stick. Yeah.
The 100 cases sold.
They sold quickly.
So you made more.
We made more and it sold out. Then we made more and it sold out. And now, fast forward, years later, it's Arrogant Bastard Ale is now the #1 selling single-serve craft beer in U.S. chain stores. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you've got these big beers. You've got Stone Pale Ale, Stone IPA. You've got Arrogant Bastard Ale. You're still bleeding money. I mean, to the tune of, I think you told me, $30,000 a month.
Yeah, so now we're talking, so Arrogant Bastard Ale came out in November 1997. Stone IPA came out a few months before that in, it was either July or August, forgive me, I don't remember, it's a little while, of 1997. And this little Ford Aerostar van that we showed you cost a lot more money to run, was mostly the driver and the gas, than we ever could have imagined. And with every single case that we dropped off at a beer store, and every single case that we dropped off at a restaurant or a bar, cost us more money than we took in. So if we dropped off a case of beer, we actually lost probably, I think I calculated it once, but only once because it was too painful to do again. We were losing about $5 a case. It's because we had no critical mass at all. While the major brand brewer guy was going and dropping off 30, 40 cases in a drop, we were dropping off 1, 2, if we were lucky, and it was really lucky, maybe 3 cases in a drop. So there was no economies of scale. And yeah, we were bleeding $20,000 a month late through the second half of 1997 and into early 1998.
What turned that around eventually?
Well, so we started talking to the big brand wholesalers and also the wine and spirits wholesalers, some of which also carried beer, that covered San Diego County in late 1997 and early 1998, in the hopes that one of them might be willing to take our beer and distribute it, and we could stem this bleeding. I actually didn't feel very comfortable with the idea because I knew that nobody was going to steward our beer to treat it and deliver it and really frankly sell it the same way we did, because we were passionate zealot geeks and those guys sell boxes for a living. It's the nature of it. But we had no other choice. So we actually made an arrangement with one. It's a wholesaler that doesn't exist anymore in San Diego. And we said, okay. They said, we'll start distributing your beer in December of 1997. As that got close, they said, you know what, let's start at the beginning of the year, in 1998, January 1998. As that got close, they said, you know what, Super Bowl is going to be in San Diego in late January 1998. We're going to be so busy focused on that, we'll start with you in February. And in January, they said, you know what, our guys are going to, you seeing a pattern here? Our guys are going to be so exhausted from working so hard, we're not going to get their focus in February because of Super Bowl, which I hear is big for the fizzy yellow guys. We'll start with you in March. And then in the middle of February, I got a phone call, and our contact at this big brand wholesaler said, you know what, we changed our mind. We're not gonna distribute our beer. We're too busy with other stuff. So thanks, and so the answer is we're not gonna do it. And I hung up the phone, and I'm sure I was as pale as a ghost, and I actually can feel the lump in my throat. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, channeling back to that time, because I walked over to my partner Steve's office, and I said, and I told him, because what they had told me was, we're not gonna work with you. And what I heard was, we're going to let your company die. And strong imagery, I could still feel that. And it was really scary. It was really, really scary. But I didn't know how powerful, I've got to pull myself out of this. I didn't know how powerful, March was. And March 1998 happened. And the weather warmed up a bit, and the sun shone, and the clouds parted, and we actually had our first break-even month. We might have made $100 or even $200 that month, which was a pretty brilliant thing when you were losing at the rate we were. It was many months of up and down for several years after that point. So we weren't always in the black, but you know, that was when we knew that there was that light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. Well, and I think anyone who's kind of talked to you or seen you over the years, you're kind of known for being a stickler and sticking to your guns. I just kind of wonder if there's been a guiding principle or a mission statement. No, I glossed over that frame. Sorry, but there's Greg and Steve signing some bottles, giant bottles of Aragon Bastard Ale. But yeah, essentially, I mean, how did you do it, and was there this guiding statement?
So back when we started, we realized that we had strong philosophies about beer, strong attitudes about beer. Craft brewing, as I told you, had been growing very rapidly before, and so there were a lot of great breweries. There were many great breweries, many really iffy breweries, but there was enough to really spark our imagination of what beer could be, and we were very inspired by that. So we decided to really just go for the styles that we liked versus some of the styles that were popular at the time. Raspberry Hefeweizens were huge then. No thanks. So I wanted to brew beer that was amazing, that you could literally say, hey, while not everybody might like this, while everybody might not agree with my taste, I think we can look at this and go, this is for many people and for ourselves an amazing beer. And so we just tried to do things that we thought were as amazing as we could.
There's a quote that you like, and we'll follow it up with one that I like, but the H.L. Mencken quote.
So this quote from H.L. Mencken, "Nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American public," was actually a very foundational, philosophical item for us, because I wanted to be the exact opposite of this. When we started Stone, I said, this person who is willing to be underestimated, I do not want to brew beer for that person. I want to make beer for somebody who doesn't want to be underestimated, who wants to be given some credit for good taste.
All right, and then this one kind of holds true for me. George Carlin, America's most profitable business is still the manufacturer, packaging, distribution, and marketing of bullshit.
Not if I have anything to say about it.
Thankfully, but yes, it's unfortunately it holds true in a lot of industries, and for me, why I got into the craft brewing industry is that largely this does not hold true. So that's my 2 cents. And then
we are still a commodity-driven world, but we are showing each other through the amazing work that so many artisanal producers out there do that it doesn't need to be just this commodity world. No longer are we stuck in the level that we had in the 70s, where you would go into a grocery store and there would be 2 kinds of cheese, the processed yellow one and the processed not quite as yellow, dark yellow one that had holes in it, right? And 1 kind of tomato, the flavorless beefsteak, and vacuum-packed, freeze-dried coffee. Who thought of that? And okay, where are they so I can smack them? And bread was the stuff that was in the polka dot plastic bag. No longer. I mean, I intentionally mentioned categories of food that I think that most people in this room would find completely unacceptable. Forgive me if I'm wrong, and you prefer vacuum-packed freeze-dried coffee. 1, okay. I think it was a joking one, but yeah, our world has changed a lot. And I had a wonderful espresso on the way over. Oh, where was that? Do you remember the name? Just down the street, this little funky little place.
Groundworks, maybe, yeah.
Groundworks.
Groundworks is awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you, Groundworks.
Good. Things have been changing. It picked up. Eventually, you started finding the new problem was keeping up and keeping enough space, and so you kind of were expanding, and then there was kind of a big move. You went from your small little San Marcos brewery down a couple miles to Escondido.
Yeah, over the years, we started off with 7,100 square feet in San Marcos, and over the years we added adjacent suite, and then 1 more. So we added 3 times, totaling 26,500 square feet. But then we were stuck. We were landlocked within the building we were in. And also, we can see our capacity as far as our 30-barrel brew house being exceeded with the growth curve. So we projected ahead, realized we needed to find a new spot to call home. And that's when we started building this. And we moved there in late December 2005.
And with every nice house, you need a kitchen attached.
Yeah. And so, I've always thought of us at Stone and really the craft brewing industry as being very much in the culinary world. For decades and decades, even I would say several generations before, beer really hadn't had a meaningful place at the dinner table other than something to literally wash down your food with, rather than actually enjoy with your food. And I felt that I wanted to showcase great craft beer with great food, and that's where the restaurant was born.
So, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit too about the design, and just here's an overview shot of just kind of the scope of what the restaurant really is.
Well, we've kind of had this philosophy at Stone of don't be different to be different, be different to be better. So realizing this is our version of what's better, it may not be everybody's version, and I always think that's okay, because that's what brings a spice of life to our world. Our version of better was just creating our own ideals and putting them here. So we have a spot that is out of the way, difficult to find, no sign on it. How many people have actually had a chance to visit? Wow! From up here, okay, I was actually pretty impressed with that. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Difficult to find, am I right? And of course, the first 2 years that we were open, Google Maps would send you the wrong place. But it works now. And so we had a complete ban on high fructose corn syrup, which means no major brand sodas. And of course, what is 99.9% of the restaurants and pubs in our country serve? Major brand sodas. So that was a bit different. We had a complete ban on commodity beer because, you know, you've heard me talk enough. That just wasn't part of our world and not part of what we wanted to foster, and didn't qualify for amazing. If you look at something just so simple as soda or beer, there are ones that you can look at, you can say, you know, this qualifies for amazing and this one doesn't. And although we might not agree, a lot of the time, I'll bet 90% of the time we would, you know, on the checklist, yes, amazing, no, not amazing, we would probably come up with very similar lists. Even the people that choose the non-amazing list. Most of the people that drink commodity food or commodity beer or eat commodity food know that they are making pretty mediocre choices. So difficult to find, no high fructose corn syrup, no commodity beer, no TVs, difficult to find, I said that again, organically focused, so our prices are more expensive, a very eclectic menu, so not for the typical pub grub approach, and yet we've been incredibly successful with this restaurant.
And you were talking about the beers. We're not just serving Stone beers.
Right. Because my thought process was, what's a more amazing beer list? An amazing lineup of Stone beers, or an amazing lineup of Stone beers plus an amazing lineup of guest beers? Well, that's a pretty easy one to decide. I'm a beer geek. I love other great craft beers. So we have 32 beers on tap. Usually around 8 to 10 are Stone, and the rest are guest taps. So we actually have more guest beers than our own beers. And on our 130 bottle list, usually only 2 or 3 are Stone, and the rest are guest. So
with that, you tend to make some good friends in the industry. I mean, for me, I've really seen just an amazing sense of camaraderie amongst brewers, not just within San Diego, but across the country. And it's interesting to see something you don't really see in other communities and other industries.
Yeah, so, you know, the great thing about craft beer is also holds true in a lot of the non-commodity, the artisanal side of the equation for a lot of businesses, food, drink, but also, hell, you know, the skateboard industry and other things like that, in that we don't have to behave like commodity. Commodity, bring it down, make it appealing to as many people as humanly possible, package it in a way that supposes attributes that really aren't there. I'm better, in the case of beer, I'm better looking, I'm more sophisticated, you know, all these kinds of things that they attribute to their brand. And if you're in the commodity world, it's all about that, beating the other guy, right? I mean, look at Coke and Pepsi, right? So in the artisanal world, we get to appreciate, love, laud, share, seek after each other's beers. Artisanal cheesemakers, artisanal bakers will get together, you know, and appreciate what each other do, and so on and so on. So, and certainly coffee roasters. If anybody's ever been exposed to Coffee Common, it's a collective of baristas that get together at special events, and they're from some of the leading coffee roasters from around the nation. And these guys, it's amazing to be there. I mean, really amazing.
So you actually work with other brewers from
Yeah.
other breweries.
I think that was a long way of saying yes to that.
Okay.
Leading up to that. Thank you for helping me cycle back
It was
around.
the next slide. You're okay.
Okay.
We're there now.
So it's a picture
In the now.
of me with Sam, my friend Sam Calgione of Dogfish Head Craft Brewery from Delaware, and from and Victory Brewing, Bill Kowaleski from Victory in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. And we got to create a beer together called Saison de Boeuf a couple of years ago. Anybody have a chance to try that? Ooh, just one. Well, your next chance, everybody, is coming up, because this will be the first collaboration beer that we've ever repeated. We're brewing it all together again on May 2nd. Thank you, Randy. May 2nd of this year at Stone. And both Dogfish Head and Victory have already rebrewed, but not yet re-released their versions, because we all three brewed it at each one of our three breweries. When we did it 2 years ago, we all were there at each brewery. This year, we're all getting together at Stone. And we're having an event called the Saison du Buffet.
So, but I mean, collaborations are
Awkward laughter there. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. And by the way, BUFF, B-U-F-F, it's an acronym, stands for Brewers United for Freedom of Flavor. And it's an organization that Sam and Bill and I created together in 2003. And we wrote a manifesto decrying the power of the fizzy yellow commodity beers and the need for the media to pay just a little bit of attention to the craft brewers. And this was really just before the media started to pay any attention to us. We had a press release, a press conference together, and one person showed up. And he was Jamie McGee from Yankee Brew News. We had it in Boston, and he was the only guy that showed up. No mainstream media at all. Now, if we get the three of us together, we can get some press, and then people actually think it's really cool and like, wow, look at these guys, and these are some of my favorite brewers. And it's just shows to go, yeah, how things have changed over just 9 years. I'm excited about it.
And collaborations kind of play a larger part. I mean, there was this one, obviously, but we do them fairly regularly, and we do a few with home brewers.
Yeah. We just had our American Homebrewers Association rally at Stone and last weekend, and we have gotten to create some kind of rock stars out of the homebrewing industry side of the equation. Yeah.
So, well, it's that boom that you experienced before is kind of happening again, and
well, I didn't experience the first one, but
well,
yeah, definitely it's boom time.
So, I mean,
for craft brewers today.
Do you attribute some of that to technology that's now available?
Unquestionably, you know, because now enthusiasts, geeks. How many people in this room are not geeks? Wouldn't describe yourself as a geek, okay? So we're at 100%. I've noticed I didn't raise my hand. I'm definitely consider myself a geek. So you know, now is our time, brothers and sisters. It's our world, and is it not? We get to communicate with each other in ways that, you know, were previously interfered by, you know, the BMOC guy, you know, beating us up out back behind school. Okay, so now we can communicate with each other and band together, and actually make movement in our world in a number of positive ways. And communicating about things that are worth communicating about is one of those things. In the world of craft beer, we have Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, which have done tremendous amounts of heavy lifting to just help connect the dots with craft beer. And of course, social media has had a tremendous, it's tremendous power in communicating amongst enthusiasts about, well, everything from craft beer to, I suppose, Justin Bieber, but, you know, whatever.
Your two passions.
Whatever you want.
Excellent.
Exposed. What was that song again?
You tell me.
I don't know. I thought I would catch him, but I didn't.
So where do you see, I mean, kind of lightning round the future of Stone?
Okay. My lightning rounding with some slides here. Oh, there we go, yeah. So we have an organic farm now. A local organic farm failed a year and a half ago, and a year ago we stepped in to revive it. So we're proud to grow a lot of our own veggies for the restaurant. And
some for beers.
Pardon?
Some for beers.
Oh yeah, of course, the Saison de Boeuf, which actually is a lyrically themed beer. It's a saison brewed with parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. That's right. It was delicious. The only person that had it was where I saw one hand raised. And how did you like it?
It was good.
Good.
I always try saison pretty much whenever I see them.
So we will have a chance again, but we grew all of the botanicals this year for the Saison de Buff at Stone Farms.
And pumpkins for a previous collaboration beer that we did.
Yes, indeed. And down in San Diego, there's the old Naval Training Center. It's called now Liberty Station, and we're working to go in and build, opening late this fall, I hope, 23,000 square foot under roof restaurant and brewery. With about an acre of outdoor space. And then we've got the Stone Packaging Hall, which will go directly adjacent to our existing brewery to allow us to continue to expand. We'll kick all the bottling and kegging out of our current building into this new building. Well, we're building this fancy new building. And our current facility will continue to expand as far as brewing capacity.
And then the proverbial money shot.
Oh. This is the first time this has been shared on camera. So you guys will actually be the first to unveil this. This is the diagram for the elevations for the new Stone Hotel. It's across the street from our brewery, or will be, and approximately 2 years from now, hopefully just under. We'll be breaking ground this summer. 48 rooms. And a couple of unique features. For example, each room will have a balcony about 5 feet deep and 12 or 14 feet wide. And on a nice day, you push a button and the garage door that separates you from the outside will roll up. And just completely bleeding the indoors and outdoors. We won't have a check-in desk. So what do you do when you want your room key? Well, go to the bar, of course. You traveled to come here. That's why you need a hotel room, and we figure you must be thirsty. And we'll have event space there, intermixed with a barrel aging room. We're really, really ramping up our barrel age program from spirit barrels, and also going to be producing a number of sours. We're very excited about that. Everybody, but I first got the chance to visit Cantillon in 1995, the year before we opened Stone. So I've been a fan of Belgian sour styles, traditional sour styles, for a long, long, long time. So it's been a long time coming as far as I'm concerned. And another 2 acres of outdoor space for specialty beer festivals and specialty beer events. And if anybody's thinking about, getting married or something, we'll accommodate you.
And all good stuff. And I mean, if you can wax poetic a little about just where you see the beer industry going and continuing to go.
Well, that slide was showing the dip and the rise of the number of breweries in the United States. We now have somewhere over 2,200 craft breweries, or breweries, the vast majority of which are craft breweries here in the United States, with another 700 currently on file in planning. This is incredible. When Stone opened, there were about 800 breweries in the United States, and then there was the downturn period where as many were closing as were opening for a number of years. And now we're in the age of nano. We're in the age of continued small breweries opening up, and where will that go? I don't know. It's fascinating. 3 years ago, 3 years ago, the average American lived within 10 miles of a brewery. That was 3 years ago. That was probably a solid 500 breweries ago. So you could probably do a little guess work on the math and think it's now within 7 miles. The average American lives within a brewery. What can the United States, what can the market bear? I think we can handle a tremendous amount of growth, and I think things look really good. Right now, craft beer represents about 5% of the market, and I think we can hit easy 20%. What do you guys think? Yeah. Together we are heavy, and it's exciting times. I do just have a word to all the young brewers that are starting up. Be true to yourself, be true to craft beer, be true to the customers. Don't try and chase after customers by doing what you think they might want. Try and do what you think is the right job, and then if you are good at it, people will gravitate towards your beer. But we have to be careful with so many breweries opening up that we don't allow some of our ranks to do things that bring all of us down. And I don't think that has to happen, but I have a little bit of a fear that it might. Because if there's a bump in the road with so much capacity and so many players out there, that some might resort to desperate measures. Stay strong, brothers and sisters.
With that, our part of the presentation, then we can certainly open up to a couple questions for Greg, and I guess if you have some for me, but mostly if you have them for Greg.
Hey, so you were saying that you want to make beers that you love, and also that you really love trying other craft beers. So how strong is the temptation when you're having somebody else's beer to have someone, oh, that's really good, I should make this? How do you prevent yourself from trying to make everybody else's beer if you're trying to make beers that you love?
So that's a great question, and I could answer it from a music perspective, because I came from the music industry before brewing, so I'll give you a music analogy. If you're a musician and you hear a song that you love from somebody else, you don't necessarily want to try and copy that, but you can love it and respect it just as much. Now sometimes what you do is you go, ooh, but the way they did this particular lick, or this character of the song, or the rhythm or something, I think I know how I might use that in this other thing that I had in the back of my mind. So just like a jazz musician can have classical and thrash metal influences that may show their own little way through into the jazz that they play, we can sometimes be influenced by things that you don't really see the connection to it, but it filters through us creatively. And that's the same with any artisanal endeavor, I think. So no, I think we're often inspired, but rarely want to copy. There are some out there that are copying. Hey, I don't want to seg and this isn't to suggest any copying, because we weren't the first ever to brew a double IPA, but just to give you a perspective, Stone Ruination IPA, when it came out in June of 2002, Okay, where was I? So Stone Ruination IPA, which came out June 2002, was the first full-time brewed and bottled double IPA on the planet. Not the first ever one that was ever brewed. It was within the first five, arguably. And now, how many double IPAs? How many breweries are making double IPAs? Or were they copying us? No. But did we get inspired by, wow, a beer can be uber hoppy, it can be super aromatic, it can be a lot stronger than I thought people would want to ever drink, because the average ABV was so much lower at that time. And we get inspired, and we do new things, and we go in that direction. So that's your answer.
Do you guys have...
Let's get the mic. So
I'm from San Diego, so I have a huge appreciation for you guys. Also home brewer. Are you growing your own hops at your...
At the farm?
At the farm, yeah.
So the question of, do we grow our own hops at Stone Farms? The answer is only on a very, very, very anecdotal basis. We don't really have a functional hop growing region in San Diego. It is in the Pacific Northwest, where they have longer days during the summer, and just better overall microclimate for that. So we can better grow our veggies and service the restaurant that way than growing hops, which we're losing money growing veggies at Stone Farms. We would really lose money growing hops at Stone Farms. And I'm not sure we get the yield or the quality or the character that we would want out of it.
My follow-up is, do you have a favorite hop?
Do I have a favorite hop? Wow. I don't actually, I usually get the old, what's your favorite beer question, which is an impossible question to answer. So just if anybody was thinking of asking it. Favorite hop? No, but I do have sort of a, I can mention some new hop styles which I think are capturing my imagination and I think a lot of people's imagination. Citra hops qualify. Amarillo, which isn't quite brand new, but it's recent. Those are a couple of hops that I really love. How about you, Randy?
I'll say Nelson.
Nelson Sauvin, yeah.
So.
And when you go historically back, the beers that are being brewed today could not have been brewed historically. They didn't exist. While IPAs as a category have been around for over 100 years, originating in the UK, they couldn't have tasted like they do today because the hop varieties that are in existence today were literally non-existent. Cascade hops didn't even come around until the 60s. And what's different about the hops today versus the noble varieties, the traditional European varieties, are the big citrusy, piney, floral, sometimes tropical fruit aromas that you can get out of these varieties today. They didn't exist. So it's a fascinating, wonderful time of actual new discovery. I can say that we're actually, music analogy again, writing new songs that couldn't have been written. Because sometimes you say, well, every note has been played. Every bit of music has already been created before and we're just rehashing. And you can say that about brewing from one angle, but from another angle you can say, no, that's not true. We're actually creating new styles that couldn't have possibly have existed. You couldn't get the flavor and aromatic profiles of many of the beers that are being brewed by craft brewers today historically.
How do you explain such a rapid renaissance of a craft beer scene in San Diego and a follow-up? Why it didn't happen in Los Angeles?
I can actually answer that. I lived in Los Angeles for 12 years, from 84 to, I guess it was 11 years now that I'm doing the math, 95. And craft beer got an early start in Los Angeles, but it was a rocky start. Wolfgang Puck started his Eureka Brewing Company, which was a very notable failure. And there was Rhino Chasers, which is a contract brewed brand that was based out of the Los Angeles region, also ended up being a notable failure. Gorky's, which was around, ended up failing. Anybody ever go to Gorky's back in the day? One, awesome. I was there too. Not far from Mel's Bar is right. Because a couple miles in downtown LA. And there were some beach breweries within the beach area of Los Angeles that were really brewing mediocre beer, and some of them were just faking it with fake tanks and actually having the beer contract brewed for them. There was so much going on in the beer industry, the craft brewing industry in LA that wasn't real or failed notably, that it put a pall on LA for a number of years. So when Steve and I both were looking at starting a brewery, we thought to ourselves, we don't want to do this in LA. This is not a good place for craft beer. And that's why we moved down to San Diego, because we thought there was more of an opportunity. But then now why San Diego? So in San Diego, we have had the luck of having a number of really amazing quality, inspired, creative brewers. And I think if we've done anything at Stone, is we help set the example that you could kind of go where the market wasn't, and the market didn't think it wanted to go or didn't know it wanted to go, and you could go that direction, you could be successful with it. So as other brewers saw us taking all these left turns and going big and going odd and such, other breweries said, wait, well, we'll break out of the amber ale, golden ale, Hefeweizen, dry stout, premium golden ale kind of categories, and start branching out into more unique styles.
And I'll add in real quick. There is great stuff happening now in LA. I mean, you've got there's great beer bars, but Craftsman Brewing Company out in Pasadena's been there since 1995. Yeah. You've got Eagle Rock Brewery that's opened in Eagle Rock a little over 2 years ago. El Segundo, really close to here. Rob's doing some great stuff there. His wheat IPA is fantastic. Hyperion Stout's great. And there's other people. If you're up Agora Hills way, there's Lady Face Ale Company. There's some really cool stuff happening now, and I think there might be something again in its infancy.
I think LA is coming into its renaissance time for craft beer. Definitely. This is a good time. I think all the way in the back.
Is there
last.
East Coast, West Coast rivalry? I'm from New England, and I know there's a lot of good craft beers up there. I feel like they're all good. I feel like some of the ones back east taste a little different. Is there different styles or different? Just talk about the East Coast.
Is there East Coast, West Coast rivalry in craft brewing? Well, when I brew it with my friend Sam from Delaware at Dogfish, I did take him into the hop cooler and feel compelled to actually say, by the way, these, we call them hops. And what she said, oh, good one, Greg. Not so much rivalry. I think it's only sort of poetry slam rivalry level, which we have a lot of respect for each other, and we love throwing elbows and making fun. But then give me another one of your delicious beers that you brew, because I really like what you do. Yeah.
So I had a baby about a year ago, or my wife had the baby.
Yeah.
And,
I'm glad you're clear on that.
and I had to stop home brewing, and I've been drinking mostly Stone IPAs since then because, damn, they're good. They're almost as good as my home brew, and because what I discovered was the worst home brew, as long as it didn't skunk out, was better than almost any beer you could reliably find, except for Stone. So what advice might you have for home brewers, or things that home brewers who want to get closer to what you guys are doing in terms of density and richness and alcoholic content and that sort of thing? What do home brewers not do that they could be doing to get a better beer?
Nice seg for buy our book, which has homebrew recipes in it, or my other book called The Brewer's Apprentice. But no, other than shilling my books, the answer to that is, as a home brewer, the best piece of advice I can ever give, join a homebrew club. Start homebrewing with somebody else, just like I did with Steve, who was much more advanced at the time we started homebrewing together than I was. So I had the benefit from learning from somebody else, and he had learned from a friend of his. So instead of just opening up a book, no matter how brilliantly written and well designed it might be, get together with friends, because home brewing with friends, of course, is a great way to do it, and you amplify your learning curve by doing it with people who have been doing it. So I recommend get together with home brewers, and the American Home Brewers Association, fantastic resource for that.
Great. Well, it's time for happy hour, so let's give a big hand to Greg and Randy.
Thank you very much.